Today we look at John's third epistle. Very short, very powerful, particularly in what it says to men, because unlike yesterday's epistle that we looked at, 2 John, today's epistle is written to a man named Gaius. So this is, like yesterday, a piece of personal correspondence from the aged apostle John. He's writing to this man named Gaius, who probably, my guess is that it's the same Gaius mentioned in Romans chapter 16, who was the host of the church in Corinth. Okay, so this is a guy who, if we've got him right, he was a man of some wealth and of some influence, because he had a house big enough to host the whole church in it. He was not a professional minister. He was not an elder in the church. He was probably a businessman or had a large estate, but he was a lover of the Lord, a lover of the church, and he freely gave his home for the church to meet in it. And because he was the man hosting the church in Corinth, he would have been the man that traveling preachers most often would hear about and would know about, and he would end up very often hosting traveling preachers. Now, we know in the early days of the post-apostolic church, we have a document called the Didache, which is probably the earliest written document we still have that describes the workings of the post-apostolic church. So what happened to the church after the apostles died and the New Testament documents had all just been written? So in the kind of late 1st century, early 2nd century, in the 100s, around there, what did the church look like? Well, we've got this document called the Didache, and one of the things that the Didache, it's a document talking about how to order a church and church discipline. One of the things it addresses is how churches should deal with traveling ministers, with traveling prophets. And so it seems that this was very common in the early days of the church, that there were evangelists and prophets who would travel around the known world and take their gift of teaching and of prophecy and of evangelism into local congregations. One of the things that the Didache tells the churches is don't host a traveling preacher for longer than 3 days, because if you host him for longer than 3 days, you know he's a false apostle or a false teacher. Quite interesting that if somebody stayed like a week, then according to the Didache, okay, it's not an inspired document, but this is the way the church saw it. If somebody stayed an extended period of time as a traveling minister, he was actually there just to leech off the church. Okay, so this is the topic of discussion for today, as John now writes to Gaius and talks to him about this thing of hosting and opening his home to traveling preachers. Yesterday we spoke about the particular temptation that women face and how they struggle with the effects of the fall. Today we squarely see, or we are dealt squarely with, the particular struggles of men and the temptations that men face because of the fall and what it's done to our makeup. And the summary statement on all of that, on what the fall has done to men, is that it drives men to want to pursue selfish ambition and pride by putting down others. Men are less concerned about being accepted as part of a clique and being part of the cool group and even bullying others because they're not part of the cool group. We see that a lot in teenage girls, that there's terrible bullying that takes place, but it's always about our clique and our group is cool and yours isn't. Men are less worried about the clique and the group. Men are more worried about their own selfish ambition and their being recognized as the one who is preeminently the leader, the alpha male. That's what men want to be. Men want to be the alpha male, and they will put down other good men. They will strangle the life out of other men who have gifts, using the power and influence that they have in order to protect their little kingdom that they're wanting to build for themselves. They will strangle and put out others who deserve to be elevated and embraced. Men want power. Men are ambitious to be preeminent. It's one of the most ghastly things about our character as men. And this is what John now addresses with Gaius. So let's read some of his comments to Gaius, and we'll see kind of how John addresses this motive and the temptation to it. I guess let me just say one last thing before we read some of the verses. As you're going to see, Gaius was doing well. Gaius was a good man. He was a hospitable man, a generous man. He was not making the mistake that we're going to see another guy was making in that church, a man called Diotrephes. Gaius is not there. He's not stumbling on this thing of wanting to promote his own power and be preeminent and put others down and exalt himself as the alpha male. But just because someone's doing well, that doesn't mean that we don't need to be warned, reminded of the particular temptation that we face as men. So if you're a man this morning and you're doing well and you aren't putting others down and using power, the power that you have to strangle the life out of other good men to preserve your position, even if you're not doing that, you need to hear this warning that is in your corrupted flesh and you need to guard against it. Okay, so let's read some of the words to this good man Gaius. John says to him, "Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers, who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well." So John says to him, you've got a reputation, Gaius, amongst the churches as being a good man who is hospitable and kind, and that you've done many things for the brethren, for the teachers, for some of the emissaries from our church, says John, probably the church in Ephesus, having gone to the church in Corinth, we send ministers to you, and you are always good and kind to them. You do well. You've got a good reputation. And then he encourages him to keep going. If you send them forward on their journey, as they are now traveling to other churches, in a manner worthy of God, you will do well. You have done well, and if you keep doing what you're doing, you will do well. I want to commend you, says John to Gaius. And you will do well. Why? Because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we may become fellow workers for the truth. When you receive these traveling ministers, these good men who are traveling with gifts of their own, and you welcome them, you do well, because in so doing you are a fellow worker for God, for the kingdom. You know, you may not be able to preach. You may not have a gift, as you watch this video, to be able to lead many others to the Lord or to teach the Bible. But you can support those who do. And when you support those who do, and you open your home, and you do whatever you can to support those who preach, you are seen as a partner in the gospel to them by God himself. This is what John is saying to Gaius. You will be a fellow worker for the truth. Okay. Now he contrasts what the danger is, the temptation. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, prating, which means talking nonsense against us with malicious words. And not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. Here we have this man Diotrephes, who you know, guys, because he's in your church. He was probably the elder of that church, saying, this man is falling foul of this danger I am warning you against. He loves having the preeminence. He loves to be the one on the stage. And he will strangle the life out of any other man who has a gift because he wants to be the one in charge. This is the great danger to men. Then John says, Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself. It may have been that John had sent a man named Demetrius to this church in Corinth. And it was the occasion of Demetrius going that John now says to Gaius, look, we've asked you to host Demetrius. The elder of the church is not going to host him because he's a man who loves power. And he's strangling the life out of any man who has a gift. This man Demetrius that we're sending is a good man. We're not saying to you that you have to receive everyone, as he said to the elect lady yesterday. But that's not really the warning that men need. Men need the warning on the other side, that this is a good man and I want you to receive him. Don't strangle the life out of this man. Don't look down your nose and use the power that you have to say no to him. Welcome him. Do not imitate what is evil, because that man, Diotrephes, in the church is doing what is evil, because he's doing it for his own pride and ambition. Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself, and we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. So you know that when we say that someone is a good man, you can trust us and you can have him in your home. So if you're a man, hear that warning today. Don't ever use your power, your influence, to strangle the life out of other good men. Rather welcome them. Give free rein to their gift. Don't worry if somebody else is holding the microphone. Anything you can do to support another good man, you are doing as a fellow worker for the gospel. So God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.